What if I told you John Denver's death wasn't an accident? Not in the way you think. The official story is a plane crash. The real story is a fatal design flaw, hidden in plain sight. A simple handle, placed in a position so absurd, it made a fatal mistake almost inevitable. This isn't just a tragedy, it's a detective story. And in his final 60 seconds, fighting with a machine that betrayed him, John Denver made a series of small, desperate moves that led to one horrifying conclusion. This is the terrifying truth behind the last minutes of John Denver's final flight, and the one piece of evidence the investigation proved that most people never see. But before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. The musician known as John Denver entered the world as Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. on the last day of 1943. The Jr. honored his father, Henry Deutschendorf Sr., a skilled U.S. Air Force aviator and a dedicated flight instructor. True to the life of an Air Force family, their home was frequently changing. They resided in numerous states, including New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arizona, and Alabama, before finally establishing a permanent home in Fort Worth, Texas. John was a reserved boy, and the continual moves made it difficult for him to build and maintain close friendships. His most joyful childhood periods were spent on his grandmother's Oklahoma farm, where he was exposed to the popular country music of the day. A life-changing event happened when he turned 11. His other grandmother gave him a vintage Gibson guitar. Music became the medium through which John found he could effectively communicate with people. Performing songs with his guitar appeared to be the method for truly engaging an audience. His high school years were emotionally difficult, and during his third year, he took drastic action. He departed for California, motivated by an intense aspiration to pursue a career in music. Unfortunately, because his father was a pilot, this independence was brief. His father flew directly to California to retrieve John and return him to Texas, forcing him to complete his high school education. After graduating, John enrolled at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, intending to become an architect. Nevertheless, his passion for music persisted, and it was there that he became a member of a musical act known as the Alpine Trio. This involvement confirmed for him that he possessed a genuine gift for music, directing him toward his future fame. He gained increasing success, securing performances and singing at nearby venues. This progress convinced him to abandon his university studies and aim for Los Angeles, intending to completely devote himself to his musical ambitions. Are you familiar with the tune "Leaving on a Jet Plane" by the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary? John Denver was its composer. He actually wrote this song while waiting between flights, experiencing a profound sense of isolation. Indeed, aircraft occupied a unique space in his heart, as aviation was a profound passion equal to his devotion to music. When "Leaving on a Jet Plane" achieved widespread success, it propelled John to new heights of fame within the music business. Record company executives were fond of his clean-cut persona and persuaded him that a surname change would improve his marketability. He selected his professional name from the majestic capital city of his most beloved state, Colorado. Thus, John Denver was created. In subsequent years, John and his family made their home in Colorado, and his affection for the stunning Rocky Mountains served as the muse for numerous compositions. The Denver name proved exceptionally fortunate for him. From the late 1960s through the middle of the 1970s, he produced 6 albums, 4 of which achieved massive commercial success. Among his #1 hits were "Take Me Home, Country Roads," "Annie's Song," and "Thank God I'm a Country Boy." In fact, his composition, "Rocky Mountain High," was eventually adopted as an official state song of Colorado, forever securing his legacy within the centennial state. John was a genuine explorer, perpetually ready to discover the world's marvels. This adventurous character was inherited from his father, who provided him with flying lessons. By the middle of the 1970s, John had become a highly skilled private pilot, obtaining licenses to operate single-engine land planes, single-engine seaplanes, and multi-engine land aircraft. He was also qualified to fly gliders and even underwent training to captain a Learjet, which he planned to use for touring to his performances. Over time, he amassed a notable tally exceeding 2,700 hours in the air. The 1970s represented the absolute peak of John's popularity. In that decade, he recorded and put out approximately 300 songs, achieving a remarkable 33 million record sales across the globe. He also ventured into acting, making guest spots on TV series and in movies that displayed his varied abilities. Nonetheless, with the arrival of the 1980s, John's musical career started to wane. Although he kept performing live, he redirected his energy toward advocacy work. He was particularly notable for being among the earliest performers to weave environmental themes into his music, beginning with the tune "Whose Garden Was This?", composed by Tom Paxton. This composition signaled the commencement of a sequence of records he made to promote understanding of ecological concerns. While the spacious and wild scenery of the American West satisfied his daring spirit, John also discovered intrigue in more remote boundaries. His interest reached past the confines of our planet, which prompted him to cultivate a distinctive fascination with the cosmos. In reality, his passion for celestial discovery was so intense that he proceeded to take and pass the official NASA evaluation designed to assess his psychological and physiological readiness for spaceflight. Due to his successful qualification, John became a prime contender to be the first non-astronaut to travel into space on the Space Shuttle Challenger. He intended to compose music while in orbit, but circumstances took a devastating turn when he was ultimately not selected for the mission. Paradoxically, this rejection later spared him from death as the Challenger disintegrated during its launch in 1986. Those close to John frequently characterized him as a risk-taker, especially concerning aviation. He possessed a profound enthusiasm for stunt flying and soaring in gliders, frequently proving his ability by cutting the engine of his aircraft roughly 35 miles from Aspen, simply to demonstrate he could land it safely without power. Among the planes he owned were a Kristen Eagle and several Cessna 210S models. However, in 1997, John Denver desired a new experience, which led him to the Long Easy, a commonly built amateur aircraft. This particular plane had been assembled in 1987 by a constructor in Texas and featured an unusual alteration. The fuel selector valve, a vital part that controls the flow of fuel to the engine from various tanks, was installed behind the pilot's left shoulder. This adaptation permitted the plane to extend its range without requiring intermediate stops for fuel. When John found the aircraft listed for sale, he felt an immediate need to acquire it, and he got in touch with the seller. It was an immediate infatuation. The seller confirmed the aircraft was in excellent condition with no known issues, and they arranged a time to conduct an evaluation flight. On September 27, 1997, John finalized the purchase, buying the plane for $56,000. He had significant intentions for it, which included a complete exterior repaint and a new tail number, N555JD. While the aircraft was undergoing its renovation at a specialized paint facility, John proceeded with his concert tour, performing his final show in Corpus Christi, Texas, on October 5, 1997. He seemed energetic, utterly vibrant, and his playing that night was truly exceptional. He was entirely unaware of the destiny that lay in wait. On Saturday, October 11, 1997, John returned to the paint shop accompanied by the same flight instructor. They departed in the aircraft, and the teacher performed a comprehensive review which involved 2 practice landings and some low-speed exercises, all taking about 30 minutes. They also examined the plane's mechanisms with particular focus on the unusual installation of the fuel selector valve. The instructor approved it, and John was eager to fly. The following day, Sunday, October 12th, John went to play golf with some companions. They tried to persuade him to stay for more play, but John was too enthusiastic about trying his new possession. Wearing green trousers, a bright sweater, and cowboy boots, he reached the Monterey Peninsula Airport in Monterey, California. The conditions were ideal for aviation, featuring unlimited visibility and light breezes. He performed his external check, yet the abnormal position of the fuel valve continued to concern him. He had already initiated steps to have it moved back to its standard location. He had noted that accessing it was somewhat difficult, but he intended to engage the autopilot before leaning back to change the fuel tank. Soon after 5 p.m., with the right wing tank holding under half its capacity and the left wing less than a quarter full, John contacted the ground controller and received authorization to move to the runway. At 5:12 p.m., he was cleared to perform 3 practice landings. a procedure where the aircraft makes contact with the runway before immediately ascending again. All appeared standard. 5:27 p.m., he asked for permission to exit the traffic pattern and cruise near the vicinity. The tower approved this, but requested he verify a 4-number code. When they still could not detect his signal, they instructed him to recycle his transponder device. "Do you have it now?" John inquired. It would shortly be evident that these were the last words John would ever speak. Just 60 seconds later, at 5:28 p.m. Pacific Time, a catastrophic failure occurred. The aircraft, which had been soaring serenely just moments earlier, abruptly pitched downward into the Pacific Ocean, close to Pacific Grove, California. Observers on the shore saw the plane flying approximately 500 feet overhead when it banked sharply to the right and fell directly into the sea. Several of these individuals also reported an odd sound, similar to a pop or an engine misfire, emanating from the plane before it crashed. The aircraft was at such a low altitude that intervention was impossible. The majority of the debris was retrieved from water approximately 30 feet deep. Consistent with the accounts from witnesses, the plane's nose section was crushed, confirming a steep, direct impact. The autopsy findings verified that John had sustained numerous significant impact injuries. This was a fatal accident. With impressive speed, merely 3 minutes after the plane disappeared beneath the water, rescue crews were on the scene. Nevertheless, the recovery operation lasted throughout the night as they worked to retrieve all of John Denver's remains from the 25-foot deep water. Following the accident, the NTSB immediately began an inquiry to determine the cause. Their search for explanations explored multiple possibilities. First, it was revealed that John had previously encountered difficulties that affected his legal eligibility to fly. In 1993, he had a legal incident, being charged with driving while intoxicated. The ruling was lenient. John accepted the charge, leading to a period of probation and a financial penalty of $372. Yet, only a year later in 1994, he was involved in another incident, crashing his Porsche into a wooded area while intoxicated. It was clear John had been dealing with issues related to addiction. He had even confessed that the song Rocky Mountain High was conceived under the effects of LSD and marijuana. Further complicating matters, that same year, he inadvertently struck a Cessna aircraft with his own Christian Eagle plane at a runway junction in Jackson Hole. These events depicted an individual struggling with alcohol. John had informed his physician in 1995 that he consumed 2 to 4 alcoholic beverages weekly while touring, and there were no known reports of misuse at that time. However, because of his previous legal offenses and his non-compliance with specific mandates, the FAA had revoked his medical clearance for flying. In March 1997, he was formally notified by the FAA via registered mail that his certificate was revoked, but he persisted in piloting aircraft. The precise motivation for this defiance is unknown, though it might be linked to his inherently daring personality and propensity for risk-taking. Nevertheless, the toxicology report from after the accident showed no drugs or alcohol in his bloodstream. In the end, the NTSB established that the lethal distraction was the awkward positioning of the fuel selector valve, which shifted John's concentration away from piloting. Their theory was that John's aircraft crashed because he inadvertently directed it into a dive owing to his failure to grasp the handle. Based on accounts from other pilots who knew the Long Easy plane and had flown it, adjusting the fuel selector required a complicated sequence. First, take one's hand off the control stick on the right. Second, undo the shoulder harness. Third, rotate the upper body 90 degrees to the left to access the handle. Fourth, shift the handle to a new position. 2 pilots even described events where they unintentionally emptied a fuel tank, almost causing a disaster due to the hard-to-reach fuel selector and the sight gauge that displays the amount of fuel remaining. Indeed, when NTSB inspectors entered a Long Easy to simulate these actions, they observed that they frequently pushed the right rudder pedal with their right foot during the turn. This illustrates how difficult the procedure was. Investigators also found that John had not refueled the aircraft before departure. If he had topped off the main tank, there would have been no reason to change tanks during the flight with the valve. Notably, John also failed to submit a flight plan, and he casually informed a mechanic that he saw no need to refuel since he planned to fly for merely an hour. Unfortunately, he had no idea that he would not return from that flight. So, the tragedy of John Denver's final flight isn't just a story of a plane crash. It's a story about how a single, overlooked detail can change everything. It leaves us with a haunting question. Was this a simple pilot error, or was it an accident waiting to happen for anyone who flew that plane? What's your take? Was it a preventable design flaw or a tragic mistake? Let us know in the comments.